Away from Whitehall, they were being led by Tommy Robinson, the founder of the far-right EDL, the English Defence League. He was followed by a large group of security and supporters, which was swelling with every step he took. Suddenly jumped into a taxi and vanished, so we lost sight of him. But in the last few moments, the Met has said that here in Chinatown there have been some clashes, some more clashes with counter-protesters, they say, as they moved into Chinatown, confronted the group. They threw missiles at officers who tried to engage with them, and they say additional officers have now been deployed to the area to identify, locate and deal with those involved. And we've seen a couple of groups of police officers in riot gear with helmets and batons in the area looking for this group. So the atmosphere still feels very tense. Now, at 11 o'clock itself on Whitehall, we were there next to the cenotaph in the middle of that exclusion zone. It was very quiet. The 2-minute silence was respectfully observed. It was very still, very silent. But beforehand, in very stark contrast, there were some pockets of violence, skirmishes between these far-right counter-protesters and police officers. I'd say hundreds, if not thousands, of far-right, certainly counter-protesters were there, among them Tommy Robinson, of course, who earlier in the week issued a rallying cry to his supporters, telling them to go to London to, in his words, protect the cenotaph, to honour the fallen, he said, calling Remembrance Day their sacred day. But it felt more like a football match in the build-up to that 11 o'clock moment. There were chants of "England till I die." There was some very aggressive behaviour aimed at police. We also came in for some aggression from some of the protesters there as well. Lots of pushing, lots of shouting and chanting. Missiles were thrown, bottles, beer cans thrown as well. And at one point, officers I saw get their batons out and had to, in order to push protesters back. Now, the fear is, if this group of far-right protesters come together with the march, that large pro-Palestine march. Now, the organisers of that march have said they're not going to go anywhere near the cenotaph. There is an exclusion zone there, meaning that anyone who's taking part in that march, if they do go there, they will be arrested. Far-right counter-protesters are allowed to be there, but as I say, they've since left, and the fear is that the two sides may now come together, and the police have said that if the intention of the counter-protesters is to confront the main protest, later today they say we will use all the powers and tactics available to us to prevent that from happening. So it feels like there is still very much a tense atmosphere here in central London, seeing how today is going to unfold.
All right, Ivor, thank you very much indeed. Well, our correspondent Molly Malone has been at Hyde Park this morning, where the pro-Palestinian marchers are setting off for. Certainly the scenes behind you, Molly, it all looks very well ordered, very well organised and peaceful.
Yeah, exactly that, Sam. It is peaceful. This march slowly getting underway. You can probably see people streaming past me, some holding Palestinian flags, others holding placards. I've actually spotted a few saying "Sack Suella." We'll remember the Home Secretary has called on this march not to happen. She's called them in the past hate marches. This week really doubling down, saying that it shouldn't go ahead, accusing the police of being too lenient on these pro-Palestinian protesters. The message of these protesters, though, is the same as it has been for a number of weeks now. They're calling for an immediate ceasefire, different, of course, to a humanitarian pause. But the controversial part of today, really the significance of today, is the fact that it's on Armistice Day. As I said, the Home Secretary did not want it to go ahead, neither did the Prime Minister, but both of them offered reassurances by the Met Police that they were able to police it properly, to police it appropriately, and they've lent on a number of different powers to be able to do that. The reason they're starting here in Hyde Park, it's a slightly different route to normal. They're starting here, making their way down to Hyde Park, through Westminster, eventually heading towards Vauxhall, where they'll see a number of speeches. The Met Police really, though, hoping for it to wrap up by 5 o'clock, in the hope that these protesters don't meet counter-protesters, as we've been hearing about from Ivor. We saw them at the Cenotaph this morning. They're hoping really for it to wrap up by 5 o'clock to avoid it becoming tense. But as I said, for now, what I can see is a peaceful protest, much the same as what we've been seeing in previous weeks.
Molly, thank you very much indeed. The picture there from the start of that march that got underway 8 minutes ago. Let's bring in our crime correspondent, Martin Brunt. We've been talking a lot all week, Martin, haven't we, about the complexity of the police operation. The only skirmishes we've seen so far this morning have been from those right-wing protesters who are not prevented from being in some of the areas around the services there to commemorate the servicemen and women on Armistice Day. But the complexity now and the concern now is that some of those right-wing protesters will find a way to clash with those on the pro-Palestinian march, Martin.
That was always the big fear, and the key mission for the police today is to keep the two sides apart. And they have warned any of those counter-protesters. I mean, clearly from the footage we've seen, they are right-wing protesters. They've warned them that they will use all their powers and tactics to stop them confronting that main march of pro-Palestinian supporters, if that is their intention. I don't think the police are surprised by what's happened so far. They warned that there would be these types of counter-protests. In the past 4 weeks of the main protest, they've seen small groups, right-wing groups and so on, in tens, in numbers, no more than 40, 50. They did say yesterday at a briefing we had that they expected them to be in their hundreds. And I think the footage we're looking at shows that that's been borne out. Whether there are any other groups around town, well, we certainly haven't seen any footage of it. So they're not surprised. They did warn that there would be some disturbance, and they said that we will inevitably have to use force. And don't equate that, though, with serious disorder or us losing control. And I don't think there's any suggestion of either of those things so far. I think what was interesting when you saw that more minor skirmish in Chinatown, when the police had followed that group of protesters from Whitehall after the ceremony, that the officers did, for the first time, I think, put on their helmets and did appear to be expecting something a bit more serious, which didn't seem to have happened. I think those protesters have again dispersed. But, you know, the big question is what happens next? Where do they go? If Tommy Robinson has left the scene, where has he gone? Is he rallying supporters elsewhere? And will there be that attempt to try and cut off the main marchers? Equally, there is some concern, of course, that there may be groups within the main marchers who will want to peel off and confront the counter-protesters. This is why a senior police officer earlier this week described public order policing as the brain surgery of policing, because it is so unpredictable. There are vast numbers of people and they just don't know how they are going to behave or react.
All right, Martin, we are keeping an eye on all of the events taking place today, not just in London, but also around the country. Earlier, the nation fell silent to mark the anniversary of the end of the First World War. To mark Armistice Day, there have been, as I was saying, memorial events taking place across the country. A 2-minute silence was observed at the Cenotaph, as is customary in Whitehall, with thousands of people in attendance, and at events across the United Kingdom, at Cardiff Castle and Edinburgh's Garden of Remembrance, at the Belfast Cenotaph, and in Huddersfield, among many others. Well, a service of remembrance has also taken place at the National Memorial Arboretum to mark Armistice Day. Hundreds of people attended the event at the Armed Forces Memorial at the site in Staffordshire. Our correspondent Ashna Hurinag is there for us. Ashna, there was a real solemnity, wasn't there, to the service that was being led by the Princess Royal, in something of contrast to some of the scenes that we have seen in central London.
Yes, that's right. Welcome to the National Memorial Arboretum, where you are completely right. There was a huge contrast to what viewers have been seeing going on in London. Here in Staffordshire, there was that sense of reflection and of symbolism as people gathered here on what is the nation's year-round place to come and remember on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. There were 200 people that were sat during this service here, but further within the auditorium there were people, up to 1,000 people, watching this event and service on big screens that were around the memorial. People now, it is open to the public once again, they have been able to come around and read the names that are on the walls behind me, but also to lay their wreaths and also pay their respects. They were joined by the Princess Royal here today, where she said a few words. She then walked around the memorial space and took in the latest names to be added to the wall. The latest name, or one of the latest ones, was Mr. Farah, whose family was present here today, and there were lots of members of the armed forces community and their families who were present. Of course, this has become a very symbolic place. It has been a place that for a number of years people have come to reflect, to remember, and remember that moment of where it all started, that moment of peace that happened in November, on November the 11th in 19...
Palestine!
Yeah, other people do. Yeah.
But the thing is I had like 3 minutes. I had no time to prepare. And I just fucking landed it, even though one, I'm not good at it. Two said she needs to leave the whole thing. I just kind of knew. And that, I think that's the thing. Is that you forget how much.
Yeah, you can just
Wait!
When I was holding this, I was like trying to...
Yeah, I think unless you're going to go to the first quote, the areas you want to cover. This woman here, she's literally
multitasking.
25 years of Sky. This one.
Really?
I'm not joking, I cannot tell you. I have never done a market that way.
Wow, it's great.
But the social worker always...
Oh, come right.
What's
You're right. So many of these.
Been watching Sky News today. Coming up, we'll bring you all the latest from central London as protesters call for a ceasefire in Gaza.
Oh, yeah, it's huge.
No, first. Oh, hello. Let me go at the end. Palestine! Palestine!
Justice! When do we want it? Now! Ceasefire! Now!
Just going to turn your mic off to save the battery.
I think I turned it off.
No, that's because I turned that one off. Don't worry, they haven't been able to hear you.
5 minutes. Want us in 5 minutes.
9 minutes.
Okay, 9 minutes. I can't do maths either.
9. It's in 9 minutes.
Put your mic back on.
Try and keep the march lawful, peaceful, and also any counter-protest away from the march as well.
All right, Graham, I think you're here with us for the bulk of the day, so we'll be calling on your expertise again. Thank you very much for now. We're just looking at these live pictures where it appears that some further skirmishes have broken out there. We can see police in their riot helmets. This is central London. I'm not entirely sure exactly. Oh, it's near Westminster Tube Station, I'm being told. Parliament Square. Graham, I had let you go, but I want to bring you back in on this. This looks similar to the sorts of skirmishes that we saw earlier around the Cenotaph. We're looking at those images. What is your read of what is going on there?
It just looks like there's some minor disorder at the moment. The officers that haven't got their NATO helmets, their right helmets on, are standing quite calmly. Even those that have got them on are in a static position, not actually reacting to anything at the moment. So there may have been minor confrontations, some minor disorder that maybe it's been resolved now. But this was almost expected. As soon as we knew there was a counter-protest going to take place today, and that was announced on the Monday. That was announced before the Home Secretary's piece.
So these are counter-protesters. These are not people on that pro-Palestinian march.
That's downright exactly as you said, above Westminster Tube. So this is from the counter-protest, but it's also from, I would say, like the far right-wing groups. So it's not the people that have gone to pay their respects at the Cenotaph, the people that have got a legitimate reason to be there. It looks like it's a group of people that have maybe been involved in some of the skirmishes that we saw just before 11 o'clock. Maybe they've been followed and located by the police and have now been either spoken to or dealt with right by Westminster Tube Station, by the Palace of Westminster. But the police aren't reacting very quickly, so it may all been that whatever has happened has calmed down now and it's just almost like resolving the situation.
And does this tend to be a direct provocation of some of those people there, of the police, or how did these things bubble up?
It can literally just be either an officer saying something to somebody or someone just reacting to the police being present there and taking issue with the police being around them and telling me that they can't go somewhere or they can go somewhere. So they literally flare up, and that's why the comment earlier on about public order policing is very challenging and very difficult on the ground because things can literally happen. Yeah, well, I'm the least likely brain surgeon ever, but it's having done this for a number of years, things can literally happen straight away in front of you. You've got to react very quickly, but very calmly and professionally, because what you're trying to do is almost like calm things down very, very quickly. The aerial shot shows you a little bit better. There's almost like a cordon of officers either side. They're using the fence line as like a third part of the cordon to keep them in one place. So it's right by the entrance to Westminster Tube Station. And by if that's still a pub, what used to be a pub just on the left there. But there's obviously some cordons gone in by the police. They're keeping them in one area. That may have been why the confrontation started. They've tried to come out of that cordon, and that's where the pushing and shoving usually starts, and why they're now just trying to keep them in one place. So the police are just static there, just trying to either hold on to them. It may well be they're trying to filter some people out, as I said earlier. Maybe some other people, some veterans that are in that little containment. So they're trying to filter those people out while they keep the people that cause the disorder.
Very delicate operation. All right, we've got the right man in the studio here with us to explain all of the goings-on at the various events taking place around central London. We will, of course, be bringing you further coverage here on Sky News of those. We'll also be bringing you the latest from Gaza as the Health Ministry says its biggest hospital there has suspended operations after it ran out of fuel.
I just have that other cone?
Palestine will be free! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! Free, free! Palestine! Free, free!
Regretting leaving my car in Millbank.
Seen Martin's message. Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
Come on.
But mounted branch in there as well, just to support that call to stop any more people coming out into Parliament Square. But that's how quickly it can happen. Literally, as people, clearly you heard your correspondent saying that people have been drinking, so there's alcohol now involved. So groups trying to force their way out, intelligence, evidence gathering officers deployed to it with mounted branch as well. Just keep an eye on people, trying to track those that have got out that cordon itself. I presume there's other officers further across Parliament Square that may be able to prevent them getting any further or closer to the march that's taking place. But it's clear they want to get through Parliament Square and over towards where the march is taking place itself. But that's the challenge for police, and it was known from the start. These groups said they were going to come out on Monday. As soon as the march was announced on Monday, the counter-protests announced that they were going to come out anyway. The Home Secretary's speech on the Wednesday, the piece she did in the Times, clearly increased some of the tension, but they were already coming out. So we already had this issue already. We knew there was going to be counter-protests. The police knew they were going to have some form of disorder if the groups ever got together. So this problem's been going all week. They knew about this. They've planned for it. They've got legislation in place, sufficient resources to deal with it as it is at the moment, containing it. They knew it was going to be minor disorder, minor confrontations that we've seen, and they're dealing with it as it happens.
Let's bring back in our correspondent, Ivor Bennett, who's really there in the melee in central London. This is just by Westminster Tube Station. It appears that the police have regained control of those scenes which were bubbling out of control there. Ivor, it looks like somebody has been detained by police. How far away is where you are from where the pro-Palestinian marchers would be now?
So we're right on the corner of Parliament Square. You can see this man being led away by police now. It appears he has been detained. His hands handcuffed behind his back. We're about a mile away from the march route, as it starts in Hyde Park, of course, and then it goes across towards the US Embassy, crosses the river at Vauxhall Bridge, and that is about a mile south of here. For now, though, this group, it seems like they are happy to stay here and kind of focus their aggression on police and make their presence felt here and aim any kind of hostility towards the officers penning them in. They clearly don't feel happy about being contained in this area. They say they're here merely to support the armed forces, protect the cenotaph, honour the fallen. They call Remembrance Day their sacred day, but clearly it's gone well beyond that now. And it's an extremely charged atmosphere. Police here, they're in their dozens. They have regained control for now, using mounted police officers, some with their riot helmets on, also a number of police transit vans as well, blocking the road. But they are outnumbered, and it feels like things could spiral out of control at any moment, as it did a few minutes ago. All of a sudden, one protester broke out of the ring, others followed, and there was this kind of temporary kind of explosion of violence before it was quickly quelled. But who knows how this is going to turn out.
Well, we'll be keeping a close eye on it here on Sky News. Let's bring in our crime correspondent, Martin Brunt. Martin, a repeat of scenes that we've seen a few times already since late morning, and criticism very unveiled, sort of thinly veiled, I should say, criticism of the Home Secretary by the London Mayor, saying that these skirmishes are a direct result of the Home Secretary's words, and the police's job, which we can see they're successfully managing to contain now those recent batch of skirmishes breaking out, has been made much harder.
I don't think the police were ever under any illusion that, with or without the Home Secretary's remarks, the scale of today's march was going to present a big challenge. I think I have to say, though, that so far I don't believe the police have seen anything that was not expected or has been too troublesome. They did warn that there were likely to be outbreaks of disorder that would be swiftly dealt with. They talked about robust interventions, which they said could, from an observer's point of view, look messy. But the message yesterday in a briefing I had with the Metropolitan Police was that don't equate these episodes with a serious disorder or police losing control. And I think, nothing that's happened so far would cover any of those 2 points. What we're looking at now is, I suppose, the aftermath of that disorder that broke out just before the 2-minute silence. If you want another view on what happened, here's a comment on a Twitter feed that's associated with Tommy Robinson, the founder of the English Defence League, a site that he's associated with. It said, "The moment patriots who were prevented from paying their respects to our war dead forced their way past baton-wielding police to do so." So the counter view on what the police were saying about the aggression that was used, and they had to contend with. As I said, police had warned of sporadic episodes of disorder. At the moment, they are in control. I can also tell you that the Commissioner's been out and about on the ground talking to some of those officers involved in those skirmishes near the Cenotaph earlier this morning at about 11:15. He's been out talking to officers, telling them that they're doing a good job, I'm sure, and also I'm equally sure warning them that there's a long way to go yet. The big concern is, however peacefully or non-peacefully the next few hours play out, it's really the time after the end of that march, the official cut-off time at 5 o'clock, when police really will be concerned about groups clashing away from the Cenotaph elsewhere around central London. But let's see what happens.
Indeed, we will. We will be watching here on Sky News and bringing you coverage of everything that takes place that we can see in central London today. Unsurprisingly, reaction from some senior politicians to some of those ugly scenes we have seen in central London, those skirmishes between right-wing protesters and police. These politicians seeking to lay the blame for what we have seen at the door of the Home Secretary for her various remarks and interventions ahead of this weekend. First up, the Scottish First Minister has tweeted, "The far right has been emboldened by the Home Secretary. She has spent her week fanning the flames of division. They are now attacking the police on Armistice Day." And from the London Mayor, he continues, I should say, "The Home Secretary's position is untenable. She must resign." Also from the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, who has also gone on X, formerly Twitter. He writes, "The scenes of disorder we witnessed by the far right at the Cenotaph are a direct result of the Home Secretary's words. The police's job has been made much harder." Well, we're going to come away from those scenes around Westminster Tube Station, Parliament Square, for a moment.
stop here.
in central London, but around the country to mark both Armistice Day and the various pro-Palestinian marches, the largest one taking place through central London today. We've been showing you scenes of largely peaceful marches taking place, setting off from Hyde Park at midday, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. We've also been witness to various scuffles, skirmishes breaking out, some right-wing protesters, and the visible appearance of Tommy Robinson, the de facto leader, really, of the English Defence League, causing trouble with police, some of his supporters in various locations around central London. The police operation, a very delicate one, not just through sheer volume of people, but in trying to keep the small numbers that seem to be seeking trouble away from those who are attending this march, saying that they want to protect war monuments and want to protect really the sanctity, they say, of the Armistice Day services, and feel that it's inappropriate that this pro-Palestinian march should be taking place on the same day as the Armistice Day services in central London. As I was saying, very difficult job for police to keep order. Thousands have been drafted in from forces outside of London. Let's get some more perspective on this. Joining me now is Shabnam Chowdhury, former Scotland Yard detective superintendent. Always good to have you on Sky News, Shabnam. What is your reaction to some of the scenes that we have seen unfolding in central London today?
Well, first of all, I actually have to be honest, I felt quite sick for those veterans that have attended today, that were there for the armistice, for the 2-minute silence and the breakout from the far right-wing groups that came along and disrupted it just the 2 minutes before it was due to start. I'll be completely honest with you, it's come as absolutely no surprise to me whatsoever, given the rhetoric that has been bandied about by the Home Secretary for this last week, which has been absolutely nothing other than inflammatory and inciting. And I personally, my description of her would be a wolf who's actually led that pack to the Cenotaph when she knew full well that there was no intention whatsoever for any of those protesters from the pro-Palestinian marches to go ahead, because that was the clear instruction from the organisers of that, and that's been communicated by Ben Jamal every single day from day one. I'm really disappointed, and I feel absolutely gutted for those people that went there for that 2-minute silence, to have to endure that. It's disgusting.
And to your mind, do you think that those right-wing protesters are fully intending to go and cause trouble with those on the pro-Palestinian march?
Without a shadow of a doubt, I think let's not get complacent about this. I think I'd be very nervous if I was the Metropolitan Police, because the fact is many of those have dispersed, but as I understand it, they've gone to various pubs in various locations, and that can only mean one thing, where individuals are tanked up, that they suddenly think that they can take the world on. And I think the job for the police now is going to be very challenging, in that they need to ensure that those individuals are kept apart from the actual march itself, and that those within the march that are also potentially intent on causing any disruption are not allowed to get into any kind of break-up groups or splinter groups to then have some form of a showdown. A very, very challenging day.
That complicates it, doesn't it? Because it's not always easy to identify these people that are coming looking for trouble. And as you say, they do split into these smaller splinter groups. It makes it very difficult for police.
Well, it will do, because if you look at the people at the march, they are people from all backgrounds: white, black, Asian, Hindu, Sikh, Jewish, Palestinian. It's not just a certain section of the community. These are hundreds and thousands of people that are descending onto London today from all across the UK, in actual fact. I just read earlier on, there are people on the M1 on their way to this peace march. And I think that the challenge the Met have now got is, I think we're literally into just over an hour into this peace march, and there's potential that it could absolutely escalate, and therefore it's really important that they keep those two groups apart. The Met have got a number of tactics that they're going to be deploying. They've got Section 60, Section 60 AA, so stop and search without any grounds, removal of masks. They're going to be deploying all sorts of other public order legislation that is available to them. So I'm hoping and I'm praying that this is going to end peacefully for all those that are attending, and anyone that is disruptive is arrested at the earliest opportunity.
You were laying some of the blame on the Home Secretary. She, of course, not calling the march a peace march. She's referred to hate marches.
Well, I'd go one step further than that. I would apportion all the blame at the foot of Suella Braverman. She instigated this. She was the one that started off referring to this as a hate march. She's consistently used that language throughout. It's been inflammatory. She's then communicated it again through her Times article. She's had a late meeting with the Commissioner, with eating humble pie to say that, you know, she's got full confidence in the Met Police. But the fact is, she's made the job of the Met Police much, much harder. She should have been there bringing communities together, not dividing them. And this is a result directly of what she has actually said that has resulted in this disorder this afternoon.
We're just seeing an update from the Met Police, Shabnam. 2 arrests have been made so far, one for assaulting a police officer and a second for possession of a controlled substance. When you consider the number of people in attendance in central London, and any arrest is one too many, but it doesn't seem as bad as it could be.
No, but I think the challenges will come from 5 p.m. onwards. My understanding is that the Met have got a Section 35 dispersal order in place. So that means that they will break up the marches, and then people will be not allowed to hang around and to go home and to wherever it is that they're going to be going. So I think that's going to be some of the challenges, and it's there that you may see there may be some scuffles, or there may be some challenges for them. But let's hope not. And yes, exactly, in the grand scale of things, hundreds and thousands of people, right-wing protesters here as well today, disrupted the cenotaph and the right to those who wanted to have that 2-minute silence. So this is what the Met are going to be faced with. It's very, very early days. So I wouldn't get complacent just yet. And I doubt for one single second the leaders in the Met of the public order event that are leading on this will not be sitting there thinking that at all.
Shabnam Chowdhury, thank you for talking to us here on Sky News. Well, in response to some of those scenes that we've been seeing, the Scottish First Minister, Humza Yousaf, has called for the Home Secretary to resign. He's accused Suella Braverman of fanning the flames of division. Let's go live to Westminster. Our political correspondent, Rob Powell, is there for us. This tension around the interventions from the Home Secretary has been bubbling all week, hasn't it, Rob? And today, in response to some of those ugly scenes we've seen, we've had not just First Minister Humza Yousaf laying the blame at her door, but also the Mayor of London.
Yeah, we're starting to get responses to some of the fighting and some of the disruption that we saw amongst those counter-protests near to the cenotaph around Westminster and on Whitehall. So we're not talking here about the big pro-Palestinian demo that has set off in the last hour or so from Hyde Park. We're talking about shortly before the 11 o'clock moment of silence and some of the scenes from then. Humza Yousaf, the First Minister of Scotland, the leader of the SNP, laying the blame squarely at the door of the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. Clearly, Suella Braverman earlier this week had written that piece, appearing to cast doubt on how the police operate in protests, such as pro-Palestinian protests, saying that they were too lenient on some people attending those demos. Clearly, a couple of weeks ago, she also called those demonstrations hate marches as well. There had been some concern that some of that language may have if anything, made the situation a lot more tense on what was already going to be a very challenging policing operation today. And what we see from Humza Yousaf is his belief that she is responsible for some of those violent scenes and the fighting that we saw earlier. He tweeted earlier saying, "The far right has been emboldened by the Home Secretary. She has spent her week fanning the flames of division. They are now attacking the police on Armistice Day. The Home Secretary's position is untenable. She must resign." That was Humza Yousaf writing on X, formerly known as Twitter, earlier. As you say, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has also posted on X with similar sentiments, saying the scenes of disorder we witnessed by the far right at the Cenotaph are a direct result of the Home Secretary's words. The police's job has been made much harder. The Met have my full support to take action against anyone found spreading hate and breaking the law. In terms of the front bench position from Labour, slightly more mild, if you like, than the Mayor of London. Yvette Cooper posted saying that the scenes were disgraceful this morning and that everyone must reflect on the impact of their words and actions. Ian Murray, though, the Shadow Secretary of State for Scotland, seemed to go a little bit further, pinning the blame on the Home Secretary, while Layla Moran, the Foreign Affairs spokesperson for the Liberal Democrats, said that this was not just about Suella Braverman, it was about Rishi Sunak as well, saying that he was the one that chose not to sack her. Clearly, it's worth saying that there has been a presence of some right-wing protesters around Whitehall in the last few weeks, whilst pro-Palestinian demos had gone on. So I think it was very likely that you were going to get an increased number of counter-demonstrators coming out, given the fact that it's Armistice Day and given the fact that a very large pro-Palestinian demo was planned. So we can't exactly know what would have played out if the Home Secretary hadn't have made some of those interventions in the last week or two. But I think we have heard from the police themselves that some of the events, some of the language of the last week hasn't necessarily helped in the operation today. And I think we will watch to see what happens as the day progresses. So far, the Met say there has been no incidents at the pro-Palestinian march. We have seen video posted online of chants from the river to the sea, which clearly, for a lot of people in the Jewish community, they find that deeply offensive. The Met has previously said, though, that the context of that chant matters, that if it happened outside a synagogue or a Jewish school, then it would be seen as very different from it just happening in the context of a protest. So we wait to see how that pans out this afternoon. But I think those scenes earlier today of right-wing counter-demonstrators pushing through police lines, fighting with the police and arrests being made, given the events of the last week and given some of the language coming from the Home Secretary, politically, I don't think it has helped her case. Clearly, there is some work and some thought going on in Downing Street at the moment about what happens with the Home Secretary. We know that that piece she wrote in the Times relating to the police had not been fully signed off by Downing Street. We know there was a degree of dissatisfaction within government and within Number 10 at that fact as well. Last night, I think the Home Secretary moved to try and take some of the heat out of the situation by saying she fully backed the police. That said, I think her position is still in question. Rumours abound in Westminster of a possible reshuffle that could see the Home Secretary sacked. And frankly, I don't think some of the scenes we've seen in Whitehall this morning will help her case, even if it is very difficult to say what had motivated some of the people causing some of that disruption and trouble there, and what would have happened if the Home Secretary hadn't have made the remarks that she did.
One to watch next week, Rob. Thank you very much. Well, let's bring you in on the latest now from the conflict in the Middle East. Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, is set to give a speech on the Gaza crisis and his militia group's recent clashes with Israel. Let's bring in our international correspondent, John Sparks. He's in a Hezbollah stronghold in South Beirut and gives us an update on the group's Martyrs' Day in Lebanon.
Listening to martial music at the moment. We've also been hearing from former...
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Group that were involved in some disorder but just before 11 o'clock, in forcing through police lines to get towards Whitehall. They found the group down near the pub by Westminster Tube Station. They put a cordon in place. They've contained them, sometimes called kettling, but they contained them there while they're reviewing footage from earlier on to see if they can identify anybody involved in the offences that were taking place just before 11 o'clock. And as the Met and you've just said, they've arrested 2 so far, and it's so far that's the key there. They will hold them there while they look through the footage, see if any of that group were involved in any specific criminal offences, and then they will arrest them from that group. So this may take some time while officers back in the operations room and the control room will review the footage.
I was just going to ask, but what sort of technology is deployed for that, just briefly?
Literally, just slow time walking through it minute by minute, just looking at the offences, looking at the clothing, pausing it, rewinding it, exactly this sort of footage, going back and seeing if you can identify anybody from this group who actually commit offences towards the police or towards anything else. Are they then in that group outside Bridge Street? So you're almost like comparing the two. You're looking at the footage here with the group you've got contained outside Westminster Tube Station. Seeing if you can identify anybody that was involved in the disorder or offences here, and then they will make the arrest while they're in that containment. So it can take some time. So
we can expect probably further updates from the Met Police as the afternoon goes on as to the number of people that have been arrested causing trouble. So far, we do not know of any arrests that are associated with those on the pro-Palestinian march, but plenty more information required to fully understand events taking place as they unfold today in central London. For now, let's have a look at the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather.
tourism. There's a guy here with a lady, and he was masked up. Have you heard any figures in your radio yet? Peace.
been an arrest made. In total, police have tweeted recently to say 2 arrests have been made so far, one for assaulting a police officer and a second for possession of a controlled substance. They say the officer is being looked after by colleagues and both suspects are en route to custody at this time. At 11 o'clock, for that 2-minute silence outside the cenotaph, it has to be said that was marked very respectfully. The crowd of thousands, which, as well as these counter-protesters, there's also veterans there, there's also families, they fell silent and the street was incredibly still, in stark contrast to what we saw moments before that, building up to that moment in which these crowds of counter-protesters, led by Tommy Robinson, the founder of the far-right English Defence League, who is also in the crowd, they clashed with police, again throwing bottles, chanting very aggressively in their face, pushing them. Officers at one point had to get their batons out to keep people back, and we were caught in the middle of it. It was really quite uncomfortable at times because some of the hostility was also aimed at us as members of the media. And it seems for now that people here are quite happy to aim their aggression towards the police. It seems like, OK, they said that initially they were here to protect the cenotaph, honour the fallen in their words, support the armed forces, but now it seems they're happy to actually have some scuffles with the police. The fear is if those scuffles are then aimed at the pro-Palestine march. It crosses the river around a mile south of here, and the fear is that breakaway groups will come together, and that's why officers want to keep these people in place.
Ivor, we appreciate that update. See you again very shortly. Thanks very much indeed. Let's just cross a couple of miles to the other side of town now to our correspondent Molly Malone, who's in Hyde Park in central London. Molly, good to see you. Things have been peaceful there so far, and certainly a large crowd expected today. What's the latest?
Yeah, that's right. The numbers here are really picking up. People have been marching down Park Lane towards Hyde Park, heading eventually over to Vauxhall for a number of hours now. It's worth saying it's, from where I'm standing, been largely peaceful. What we've heard them protesting, the placards they're holding, that's not to say that some of what they're saying in those marches, Free Palestine from the river to the sea, won't necessarily not be offensive to people, but the mood is good-natured and it's, from where I'm standing, fairly peaceful. Now, what happens now, as I said, they'll march down towards Hyde Park and eventually end up in Vauxhall. The next couple of hours, we're expecting a number of speeches, but police really want this to wrap up by 5 o'clock. After that point, they'll have dispersal orders where if things do become tense, if these pro-Palestinian protesters are met with counter-protesters, that the dispersal orders will be in place to say, you know, break up these groups. I have to say, spotted some Saxe-Suella placards. It's worth saying, of course, that the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister did not want this march to take place, but they have got reassurances from the Met that they think that they can appropriately police these marches. As I said, the idea really is to keep these protesters separate from and away from the counter-protesters in order to keep it peace, in order to keep them away from Remembrance Day events in Whitehall near the cenotaph, to keep the two parties, if you like, the two different groups apart. Now, as I said, they will head to Vauxhall, hoping that this wraps by 5 o'clock so that the Met will hope to keep what at the moment seems a fairly peaceful protest in place.
OK, Molly, thanks very much indeed for that update. Molly Malone across events for us at the Pro-Palestinian March in central London. Well, let's just join our crime correspondent, Martin Brunt, now, who, of course, is staying across events when it comes to the policing of these events this weekend. Martin, certainly a lot of scrutiny and pressure.
I don't want to get involved in kicking off with something. Don't do it! Don't care, it's Mick. Wait, stop with the names there. You're only on a day, really? What about your rotten? Oi, let's listen you in with it. Pure respect, Mr. Cunts. They'll think you're a criminal there. Sorry, mate. I never mentioned Epstein.
Secretary Sadiq Khan has made his views very clear in the last week or so. The view from the Labour front bench is slightly more measured. Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary, calling them disgraceful scenes, saying everyone must reflect on the impact of their words and actions, which I think you could easily say is directed at the Home Secretary. The truth is, we don't know what would have happened had the Home Secretary not made the remarks she has in the last week. Right-wing counter-protesters have been appearing week after week at these protests. There have been injuries on previous weeks, and this was always, I think, going to be a big, significant march, given that it is Armistice Day. But I think it's also fair to say that Suella Braverman's words have not calmed the situation down. She, as many know, called the pro-Palestinian marches time and again hate marches. She obviously has come under huge criticism from many for accusing the Met Police of bias, treating some protesters unfairly, and has been accused of ratcheting up tension. Last night, she, I think, tried to sort of dial down the temperature. A source close to her saying that she had full backing for the police and were confident they would crack down on any criminality. And she met with Sir Mark Rowley, the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. So a more conciliatory tone from the Home Secretary. But of course, we do know that her future, I think, does hang in the balance. Number 10 are looking at the article that they didn't clear that was published in the Times, did not have their full sign-off, and there are some senior cabinet, many senior cabinet ministers who have been critical of her language, including the Chancellor saying that the words she's used are not the words that they would use. And as you've heard, the SNP and Labour making a link between her words and what has happened today. I think what has happened today could potentially have an impact on what happens to Suella Braverman down the line in the next week or so.
Ali, for now, thanks very much indeed. Ali Fortescue there with the latest from Westminster for us. Well, joining me now is our police commentator, Graham Whettone, who's also staying across events for us with your keen policing eye. Now, just 2 arrests so far, Graham, following that incident just before 11 o'clock near the Cenotaph. Let's just begin with talking through what happened there and what the police will now be trying to do.
We saw images from just before 11 with a group that tried to break through a police line or police cordons to get up towards Whitehall.
So just talk me through what we're seeing here.
Just people actually trying to fall through police lines, confronting the police, kicking barriers, maybe even some assaulting police officers. But this is what the police will be doing now. Now they've got this group contained. It's any offences under the Public Order Act, so threatening, abusive, insulting behaviour, either directed, intended at them, or even fear or provocation of violence. So various public order offences. They will be then reviewing the footage, seeing what each individual is actually doing, and if they've got them contained in that little group that's now outside Westminster Tube Station, identifying from that group and then maybe going in and arresting them. That's a smaller group. They are contained. It's a lot easier to do an arrest on those circumstances than trying to drag them out of a crowd, as we can see now on the screen, at the time of the offence. So now it's some time later. It's calmed down, it's contained. The police can review the footage, actually identify the criminal offences taking place, and if need be, move in and arrest those that have committed criminal offences and let the others go.
Now, the Cenotaph has been under 24-hour protection. There is an exclusion zone around it for pro-Palestinian protesters. Does that exclusion zone apply to the likes of those counter-protesters who've turned up?
No.
Why not?
I think the Gold Commander was clear that he was happy to allow them to go to the Cenotaph because they wanted to go there to, they said, pay their respects and protect the Cenotaph. So the police have allowed them to go towards the Cenotaph and Whitehall to pay their respects at 11 o'clock. I think we saw the minority of the group there, because many people were there to pay their respects at 11 to observe the 2-minute silence. It was observed respectfully compared to everybody that was there. But that's why they've been allowed to go there. So the police have got them in one area in Westminster. The march itself is way over the other side at Park Lane, and that's going down towards Nine Elms over Vauxhall Bridge. So, for want of a better term, the 2 opposing groups are effectively kept apart at 11 o'clock. And that's been like the police tactical plan is to try and now keep counter-protesters away from the march itself.
Now, there's only been 2 arrests so far, Graham.
Yeah.
In terms of that clash that we saw with the police there earlier, clearly there were far more than 2 people involved. How will police be working out who has broken, who has caused a criminal offence there, if you like?
It comes down to almost like slow time viewing of the footage, slow time viewing of what was actually taking place just before 11. So looking at either the footage that you see on various news feeds, so looking at the offences that were taking place, seeing if you can see one arrest being made there, and then looking at who you've got contained in that little area. So almost like a comparison between the two. We've got a male with black top, black trousers, whatever, clothing on, description, etc. Is that individual within that? And also looking at the footage of who's contained there. So it's almost like trying to match the 2 up. This individual has committed a criminal offence. Officers will then move in and arrest them. OK,
so it's all about identifying what is a criminal offence and who may be responsible.
Firstly, what offences have taken place.
So by kettling these protesters, it's not just to keep them separate from the other march that's happening today, it's also to try and identify people and know where to locate them. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what the Met have said, and that's what, looking at this, what I can see is taking place. They basically contained this little group. They found them after the disorder, and sometime after 11 o'clock. So they've put a containment in place, and in policing terms, I know it's called kettling elsewhere, but in policing terms, it's a containment cordon that's gone in. They've contained them there, and it's a slower process of identifying the individuals that have committed offences and making the arrests.
Now, it's not an easy job for the police today, Graham. What's your take on how things are going so far?
So far, I think it's gone almost as you could expect. From Monday of this week, the Met actually asked the organisers not to hold this march, this procession, because it was Armistice Day. The organisers declined, so they wanted to hold their march. The police didn't have the legal powers to ban it, so they had to then work with them. So they've worked with them, identified a meet point, identified a route that keeps them well away from Westminster and the Cenotaph, and the organising groups had no intention of going anywhere near that in the first place. But as soon as the march was announced on Armistice Day, the counter-protest groups said they were going to come out. So this was on Monday, before any other comments and rhetoric, etc. Over the week, we've seen the police have been building up towards this. They almost like expected there would be some incidents of disorder and confrontation, and they've been dealing with that as the day's gone on. And they'll continue dealing with whatever comes their way during the day. And it depends now on getting this march to its rally point and its conclusion, that to finish at 5 o'clock, and then groups to disperse. And they've got various legal powers, legislative powers in use, that they can disperse people if need be and try and keep the two opposing groups away from each other.
OK, Graham, we really appreciate your take. Thanks very much indeed. And of course, we'll cross back to Graham and those pictures in central London as soon as there's any development for you. We're staying across the situation for you there. As Graham was saying, it is, of course, Armistice Day. And earlier, the nation fell silent to mark the anniversary of the end of the First World War. To mark Armistice Day, there have been memorial events across the country. A 2-minute silence was observed at the Cenotaph in Whitehall, with thousands of people in attendance. And at other events across the United Kingdom, at Cardiff Castle and Edinburgh's.
shall we? Yes, Chet. This is exciting. This is exciting for you, by the way, guys. This is exciting for you, by the way. About what? Hello. Thank you.
spinning out.
Well, what's that? And he's tightened his shot up so much that he looks like there's 1 or 2 people. It's all kicking off down by Vauxhall Bridge Road. Dave's showing pictures across the street. We don't want to go anywhere.
Hello.
Because they can't send me up. The van won't go anywhere where they want it, south. It won't go anywhere. Yeah. So I was just saying about the policeman. He said, where are you going now? I said, hopefully, that fucking way, then west. Simple as that. It's a spin, man. Go up there. Three bars. I'm just so
Would you like some sweets? They're from Blackburn. Would you like some sweets? Yeah. You're welcome.
Usually, over the last 3 weeks, the last week, the pilot. Everyone sees videos of police pushing around. So quite a few people.
Palestine will be free.
These people.
Palestine will be free.
You can just see
Palestine will be free. Palestine. 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 Palestine.
Section 60 is in place. Section 68 to remove masks.
I'm not saying piss talk today, you're going to get there, isn't it? If you walk, you're going to be
Are you in the underground car park? You know that?
No, I'm on the street. Right, Peter Street. That's all, it's always all right there. Yeah, no, I'd say you're really all right there. Like, for damage-wise.
You know it's public. Showed me some videos of it. See that dance on it? Yeah.
Update from the Metropolitan Police that we have is that 82 arrests have now been made in central London of counter-protesters trying to reach the main march. We'll have more for you on this developing story in central London after this short break.
What channel do you belong to? Can I say a couple of words, nice way? It's not on? All right. I've had the chocolate with me. Give me these exercises on the right side of the bedroom. I mean, let me fucking legs over my head here, and all that. It clears it, you know what I mean? It does work. the M4, isn't it? Up into the M4, then turn off the A308. You don't know the way things are really. Come off the M4 and go past it. And I think the second turn. It's the A3.
This is by the cenotaph on Remembrance Day. It's
82 arrests now under breach of the peace in a pub or a location near to Pimlico, which puts it close to the march route. So clearly the police concern is the counter-protesters are trying to get close to the marchers themselves and have some form of confrontation. So that's what they're trying to prevent.
And is this largely what you expected to happen today, Graham? And how do you think the Metropolitan Police are coping with the situation?
Public order policing is always very challenging because literally things happen very quickly. You have to react to it, but you almost got to be waiting for it to take place. But there's been an expectation or an anticipation that with this number of counter-protesters in London, there will be some form of confrontation. So it comes down to having your resources in the right place, but then reacting to it very quickly. So this isn't unexpected. It's still in the regions of being disorderly confrontations as opposed to escalating into anything more serious.
Now, the pro-Palestinian march, which began at 12 o'clock, is peaceful. We haven't got any reports of any scuffles or any problems there so far, Graham.
No.
But you have seen a call put out by the police of some incident that they're looking for more information on.
Yeah, we're reviewing that march as well for any offences taking place, and there's stuff on social media, images of people comparing like headbands being worn today by people on the march with maybe headbands worn by Hamas terrorists. So the police will be looking at any possible offences by the marchers. So any support for a prescribed organisation, which Hamas is, they will look at it, gather the evidence, and if it's appropriate and it's tactically available to them, they will make arrests today.
OK, and let's just take a look at the picture we just had in from Vauxhall Bridge as well. Now, there's no audio on this footage because it had a lot of expletives in it and strong language.